What's up, BookTube? Sandy Golson back here with a extra late TBR for the month of November 2020. Now, one of the reasons that I'm late with this particular TBR for the month of November is because I've really been locked in, focused on NaNoWriMo 2020. And I'm actually making really good progress. Check the channel later for another video on that particular topic, along with many other videos on that particular topic. But with this video, I wanted to emphasize that because of NaNoWriMo, I've been a little bit behind in terms of doing certain types of videos. And two of them are, number one, the one you're watching right here, the TBR, and number two will be the October 2020 wrap-up video, which is also coming up pretty quickly on this channel. So, for the month of November, a lot of people are doing nonfiction November, and I thought that was kind of a cool concept, and I'm thinking, you know what, I'm gonna probably do that. And so while I haven't done the TBR video yet, I have been keeping up with my reading, and I tend to read nonfiction books a lot faster. So I'm thinking that I might have a extra beefy reading list for the month of November 2020. So with all that, let me first say, before I jump into the books, if you could, please hit the like button for this video. And if you could help support me and the channel, please consider hitting the subscribe button as well to be on tap for future videos. You can hit the bell button for notifications when upcoming videos are on their way. So with that, let's just jump right on into it. First off, I'm going to start with the two books that I've already read this month, because again, I'm late here getting to the TBR. I've actually already read two books this month, which is pretty good for me. But again, I do read nonfiction books a little bit faster. So the two books that I've read this month, I'll start in chronological order. The first that I read is Wounds. This is a book that's written by two people that I know, one that I know particularly well, Rajel Jones and Daniel Abbott, and it's a memoir that goes from their alternating perspectives about incidents that they've had. And this book could not be more timely in 2020 when you think of the things that have been going on from almost the beginning of this calendar year to where we are now. And what Wounds does is it really walks you through some of the inner pain, some of the inner turmoil that a lot of people are suffering. And it really gives you a inside look, if you will, at race relations and the complexities of it and the ways that people learn to cope with these things, or in some cases not cope very well with these things. So I would really encourage you to check out this book, Wounds, by Rajel Jones, Daniel Abbott. Next up is going to be kind of a controversial book for me, because I have grown up, of course, in the state of Michigan, and I grew up a big Michigan fan in terms of football, college football, and I'm also a fan of Michigan State, though Michigan a little bit more, admittedly. And so this book is going to be a little bit controversial, because the second book that I read this month that was on my TBR is A Fire to Win by John Lombardo. And this book talks about the legendary Ohio State football coach Woody Hayes. And I've always been fascinated by the Woody Hayes and Bo Schembechler rivalry. I should let you know that this is going to get kind of football heavy, maybe a little bit, but I won't dwell on it for too long. And so they really battled each other quite a bit in the late 1960s through the 1970s. They had the legendary 10-year war of football games between the two longtime rivals. And so I was really fascinated to read a little bit more about Woody Hayes, because I've heard a lot of things about him, but I really wanted to kind of find out more about what this guy was really all about. And this book is extremely thorough, and I found it to be intriguing, because Woody Hayes was a hothead in a lot of ways, a legendary football coach, incredible level of success. I'll just say this, while at Ohio State, he won 5 national titles. I did not know that before I read the book. Let's see, 13 Big Ten Conference championships, made 8 Rose Bowl appearances, and earned 2 National Coach of the Year awards. So I did not know about the 5 national titles, so that kind of blew me away when I saw that. And so A Fire to Win, it really gets behind what Woody Hayes was all about. And he was just a really intense guy, could be known to just have just fits of kind of violent anger, fits of violent anger, including a tragic incident that actually ended his college football coaching career. So A Fire to Win by John Lombardo, just a really interesting read. Now I'm going to begin with some of the books that I have not read so far, and I'm going to go to Michael Eric Dyson, a fellow Detroiter like myself, and a couple of books that he's written about Martin Luther King that I've had in my possession for a while, and I just haven't gotten around to reading it. And with a lot of things that are going on, it maybe is more appropriate than ever to take another look at reading these two particular books. The first book is I May Not Get There With You, The True Martin Luther King by Michael Eric Dyson. And there's a review on the front by Robert Boynton of the New York Times. Dyson gives us a thoroughly contemporary king, an enigmatic hero whose flaws and failings make him more, not less relevant to our lives. And so really excited about reading this one. Here's a little bit from the back cover. A private citizen who transformed the world around him, Martin Luther King Jr. was arguably the greatest American who ever lived. Now, after more than 30 years, few people understand how truly radical, he was. In this groundbreaking examination of the man and his legacy, provocative author, lecturer, and professor Michael Eric Dyson restores King's true vitality and complexity and challenges us to embrace the very contradictions that make King relevant in today's world. So really looking forward to checking out this one. I May Not Get There With You. That's actually, if you remember that, it's from the famous last speech that he actually gave before he was assassinated on April 4th, 1968 in Memphis, Tennessee. Speaking of April 4th, 1968, that is the title of the other Michael Eric Dyson, Martin Luther King book. Just as simple as that, April 4th, 1968. Martin Luther King Jr.'s death and how it changed America. A New York Times book review called it lovely and haunting. And I'll read the back cover. On April 4th, 1968 at 6:01 p.m., while standing on a balcony at a Memphis hotel, Martin Luther King Jr. was shot and fatally wounded. Only hours earlier, King ended his final speech with the words, "I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land." Acclaimed public intellectual Michael Eric Dyson examines how King fought and faced his own death and how America can draw on his legacy in the 21st century. April 4th, 1968 celebrates the leadership of Dr. King and challenges America to renew its commitment to his vision. So really looking forward to reading this one. I think it's going to be a pretty fast read for me. So April 4th, 1968 by Michael Eric Dyson. Next up, and you might see a theme beginning to develop, is two books that I bought, both used. One that I purchased many years ago on Amazon, never got a chance to read it, and one that I purchased maybe a few years ago, but have always been interested in this individual but never read. And I'll start with that one. And the Walls Come Tumbling Down is a book by, it's actually an autobiography of Ralph David Abernathy, and he was one of the right-hand men to Dr. King during some of those incredible times that Dr. King experienced. And I'll read a little bit from it here. And The Walls Come Tumbling Down is the intensely moving and beautifully written autobiography of one of the civil rights movement's leading lights. The Reverend Dr. Ralph David Abernathy was Joshua to Martin Luther King's Moses, at his side during all the battles and eventually his successor. So Reverend Abernathy is somebody that we don't, this is a huge book by the way, Reverend Abernathy is somebody that we don't talk about nearly enough, but had an incredible impact. And again, he was right there with Dr. King during some of those really turbulent times. And as the inside cover said, his successor. So I'm excited to learn a little bit more about the man behind the man, Ralph David Abernathy. Next up is a book by Marshall Frady about the Reverend Jesse Jackson. It's titled simply Jesse. And Marshall Frady, again, is the author, The Life and Pilgrimage of Jesse Jackson. So I'm excited about this one. Jesse Jackson, for a lot of black people who are about my age, in your 40s, you grew up admiring Jesse Jackson, because in some ways he was Barack Obama before Barack Obama. He was that guy that made you believe that you could be a leader, made you believe in yourself. And so he's controversial, of course, to a lot of people, but to many more, I think he is revered for the inspiration that he passed along to so many young black men and young black women, black families, that you can achieve what you want to achieve. if you do things the right way. And so I'm excited to read a little bit more about this one. This again is a massive book right here, and you can tell just the writing in it is really small. So it looks to be a very comprehensive review of Reverend Jackson. And so I have read Marshall Frady before. He really is a tremendous biographer. I've read one or two of his books before, and so I'm really excited about reading this one. Next up are a couple of books related to Detroit, and one of them is a book about the legendary mayor Coleman Alexander Young, from social activist to power broker. And for a lot of people who grew up in Detroit, there is nobody like Mayor Young. And so I'm excited to read about the controversial, outspoken mayor who was not afraid to drop profanities at the drop of a hat, and who would definitely tell you what was on his mind without any fear. Beloved by some, hated by others. And I just am really excited to learn a little bit more about Mayor Young. Next up is Beer Money, a memoir of privilege and loss by Francis Stroh. Now, if you grew up in Detroit and you're of a certain age, you remember the Stroh beer brand and the massive Stroh brewery, which no longer exists. And so I was really intrigued when I saw this. I got this on Book Outlet, actually, really cheap. I saw it on Amazon, more expensive, and then it popped up on Book Outlet, I don't know, probably a year or so ago, and I decided to pick it up. So let me just read a little bit about this. Francis Stroh's earliest memories are ones of enormous privilege. Shopping trips to London and New York, lunches served by black-tied waiters at the Regency Hotel, and a house filled with precious antiques that she was forbidden to touch. Established in Detroit in 1850, the Stroh Brewing Company had become by 1984 the third largest brewing empire in America and a brand emblematic of the American dream itself. While Stroh was coming of age, the family fortune was estimated to be worth $700 million. But behind the beautiful facade lay a crumbling foundation. Detroit's economy collapsed with the retreat of the automotive industry to the suburbs and abroad, and likewise the Strohs found themselves, their wealth and legacy disappearing. As their fortune dissolved in a little over a decade, the family was torn apart internally by divorce and one member's drug bust, disagreements over the management of the business, and disputes over the remaining money they possessed. Even as they turned against one another, looking for a scapegoat on whom to blame the unraveling of their family, they could not anticipate that far greater tragedy was in store. So, really excited about that. Again, that's a kind of a not nearly remembered enough part of Detroit history, the Stroh family and the Stroh Brewery. Just really interested about this because, again, it's just something that I remember from being a kid, and just want to check it out and see what it's all about. Next to last is 40 Minutes of Hell, The Extraordinary Life of Nolan Richardson by Russ Bradford. Nolan Richardson was a great college basketball coach, most notably at the University of Arkansas, where he had some outstanding teams, won a national championship in 1994, I believe it was. And along the way, he was very controversial in the sense that he was outspoken, and that bothered a lot of people. And so I'm really curious to learn a little bit more about his backstory, which I'm not really very familiar with. And sometimes there are things that are going on inside people that you don't really know about, and you want to maybe better understand the person that you saw on the outside or the person that you saw on TV. So I'm hoping that this will get in a little bit deeper and help me understand a little bit more about one of the great college basketball coaches of all time, Nolan Richardson. Lastly, a fascinating music figure that has always intrigued me and I've always wanted to learn more about is Janis Joplin. And that brings me to Love, Janis, and a biography written by Laura Joplin. It is an intimate biography with never before published letters. The back cover, Janis Joplin blazed across the 1960s music scene, electrifying audiences with her staggering voice, unforgettable performances, and her explosive persona as a tough-talking and hard-drinking blues mama. By the time her life was cut tragically short by a heroin overdose, she had become the stuff of a rock and roll legend. Inspired by more than 100 letters Janice wrote home throughout her career, her sister Laura gives an unbiased and full-blooded look at a talented artist who was deeply misunderstood. So that is by the way, it's a great back cover, great summary. So kudos to whoever wrote that. Assuming it wasn't Laura Joplin. If it was, then kudos to you, Laura Joplin. I'm looking forward to reading this. Janis Joplin's always fascinated me. You know, somebody that was obviously before my time, although the gray might say otherwise sometimes. I'm really looking forward to learning more about her. I've seen videos of her, kind of short bios about her on TV, on video. So I'm really looking forward to learning more about the real woman and what she was truly all about. So there you have it, my TBR for the month of November. Again, I've already knocked out 2 of these books, but I'm looking forward to reading as many of the rest of the books on this list as possible. So thank you for tuning in. If you could, hit the like button on the way out. And as you close the door, please consider hitting the subscribe button for future videos on this channel, and the bell button for notifications of future content here about BookTube and AuthorTube topics. Peace.